I was at a place for recovering
Yes.
addicts to get together
Yes.
and talk about their problems. We'll
Yes.
say it that way.
Yeah.
I shared something, and I probably thought I was so profound and just cured everybody in the room. But as a young man kind of spoke after I did, and he just looked at me and he said, I pray you actually finally get in enough pain to be willing to do something about your problem. For the first time, someone put a word to what I was feeling. And that's really where the journey began. From that moment forward, I started seeking help.
Substance use disorder touches all our lives, and often we feel hopeless or frustrated in our pursuit to understand how and why it happens.
Welcome to APC Recovery Cafe, where we discuss the topics and trends around substance use, provide education and resources, offer recovery support, and also discuss prevention tactics, all through the stories of the people who have been there.
We invite you to grab your favorite coffee or tea and join us for a variety of guests that will bring understanding, information, connection, and hope.
Together, we can break the stigma and pave a brighter future for each other.
Hey folks, welcome into this edition of APC Recovery Cafe. I'm Art Wimberly. I'm a person grateful to be in long-term recovery, a volunteer at the Addiction Prevention Coalition, and here in the studio today with my co-host, Carrie Wimberly. Hey, Carrie.
Good morning, Art. How are you?
Doing great. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
I know.
Like 20 minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
approximately.
Carrie is the executive director of the Addiction Prevention Coalition. And Carrie, why don't you introduce us to today's guest?
Yeah, so we're glad to be here today, and we have Wade Meadows here with us today from Florida Springs. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
I'm
we've
excited.
had to reschedule about, I don't know,
A
12
few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
But
we
and
maybe
I-
originally started around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
but, yeah.
Yeah. Life and recovery kind of get in the way
Yeah.
sometimes.
Sometimes I think, families in Tennessee, so like Christmas around the holidays, we were traveling. That kind of hit it some.
Yep.
Anyway, it doesn't.
Yep. I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad we're
here
worked it
now.
out. Yes, and you traveled to be with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And no
We're very
distance too far. Right?
We're very special.
Yes.
So appreciate
I'm
it.
honored. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. So, first of all, you have a nice cup of coffee there. So we like to start by, try to analyze people's psyche based on the beverage that they're drinking. So it's just black coffee. So you don't do the sugar, the cream,
Yeah, so that's a funny story. I liked coffee with sugar in it, and of course I liked creamer in it. In time, I got to where I didn't put the sugar in it anymore. I would just use creamer. And my sponsor and my mother both kind of always said to me, if you learn how to drink it black, you'll never drink it any other way. And I was like, I have no desire to learn how to drink it black. Like, I don't, what difference does it make?
I'm happy the way it is.
Is
Yeah,
that the goal? I mean,
And so then I got into this thing about vegan dieting and removing dairy products from your diet. And so that was kind of the main dairy product I used was creamer. And so I started trying to use like non-dairy creamers. Well, half the time you're somewhere and there's non-dairy creamer, and the other half of the time there's not. So it was kind of like half the time I was drinking coffee with creamer, and half the time I was drinking it black. And they were right. The more I drank it black, the more I was just like, it's better that way.
So you've got a beautiful overwrap there on with Florida Springs on it. So tell us about Florida Springs.
I guess the best way I can tell you about Florida Springs is, being a person in recovery myself, I just I look at what has helped me along my journey, what have been the important pieces. And so I was working for a different facility. I had gone to Florida Springs and kind of done a tour and gotten to know some of the people. And the more I was involved, like the more we developed our relationship, the more things I saw about Florida Springs that I joked with my wife. I was like, one day they're going to call and I'm going to go. And I was like, I don't know when that's going to be, but I just think that one day they're going to call. And so I just kept being blown away by, the things I learned about their style and what they did, kind of the philosophy. And so then, around Christmas of 21, they called, or I guess it was Christmas of 20, and they called, and she said, didn't know if I would be interested, but if I knew somebody they were looking to hire, and so I was like, I'm interested.
I've been waiting on y'all.
Yeah, I kind of have 2 requirements here, and she was like, check and check, and I was like, when do I start? So we interviewed, but
so in a nutshell, for those that might be watching that are not real familiar with treatment centers, can you just kind of describe what goes on there, what the program's like? And
I think kindergarten. That's kind of what it's like. A bunch of kindergartners. No. Every program has its own style. I mean, typical process through is that you start in a detox, which is very painful, very uncomfortable. Of course, every treatment center is going to take the same approach. We're going to try to minimize it as best we can, right?
So y'all have got medical detox.
Correct.
Right?
We have medical detox, and the only way you're really going to eliminate the pain and the discomfort is the one thing that we're not going to let you have, right? And so how can we minimize it and keep you as comfortable as possible? Once you kind of level off and get stable, then we start bringing you in, participating in groups. So for like Florida Springs, we do psychoeducational groups in the morning. Then they have a break for lunch, and then we do what we call process groups in the afternoon. Each person has so many individualized sessions with their therapist, phone calls with their family, that kind of thing. And our program is 30 days. That's typically about what you're going to find. It's about a 30-day treatment program. But that's not near enough, right? And,
Right.
one of the things I try to encourage patients to understand is in treatment setting, we can talk about where your buttons are, but we can't really push them,
Yeah.
So we can talk about coping skills and how to handle it when your button gets pushed, but you're not really going to know how you're going to react until the button gets actually pushed.
Right.
So when you leave treatment, you've been in kind of a very safe and secure environment, and we've talked about all the right things, but when you walk out into the real world and someone pushes that button, it's like, we like pause, it's like,
Yeah.
I'll tell you where to put that pause right now. I'm angry. And so we're very much promoting that continuum of care, that long-term program. And so we don't want to just see you come in, do 30 days and shake your hand and say, good luck, you got this.
Yeah.
So generally recommending to the person who's struggling with substance use disorder or their loved ones, if they're involved with the decision making, to move into something like sober living or halfway house or three-quarter way or somewhere on the spectrum there.
Correct. Or like an MAT program, or we have outpatient services.
Yeah,
or,
medically assisted treatment.
Right. Or get involved in a local recovery community, an AA or an NA. Or we have a big portion of our staff that does CR, which is Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah. Carrie and I think we started the first Celebrate Recovery in Central Alabama maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah,
actually.
Art was a state rep for a while.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We have a lot, and they do really, we have several of our staff members, that's their choice, and they're phenomenal people, do really well.
Well, actually, for the Addiction Prevention Coalition on the board right now, moved into the board chairmanships, Tyler Currier, who's been in the APC Recovery Cafe and who is now the team lead for the state of Alabama for Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah.
So probably need to connect you guys.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
One thing there's a couple of things. We've had a family member that's been at Florida Springs, and we've been our children have struggled, so we've been in this space for a couple of decades. So, a couple of years ago, there was a relapse, and we needed some help, and just like every other family, even though it's my job, and Art's a recovery coach. I mean, in that place, you're a family member, and you need some help, and you need it quickly. And so, I'll tear up right here. But I mean, to have somebody say, "Hey, call me, I can help you," was, it's very powerful, and it worked out, and their experience was so positive there. I just appreciate all of that, and I think you guys meet a need. I know it's in Florida, and people are like, okay, we're in Alabama, But, when you got a situation where there's not insurance and you need a medical detox, you guys are kind of like a niche. You have a niche, I guess, for
Right.
a group of people that are looking for treatment for a loved one.
Yes. From a cost perspective, I don't believe you're going to find as nice of amenities and as quality of treatment that Florida Springs provides anywhere close to the price point that Florida Springs is at.
Yep.
We do take Florida Medicaid. Doesn't do
Yeah.
you much good here in Alabama, but
Right.
we do take it in Florida. So
Yeah.
so we do serve a larger population
Yeah.
than your average, commercial insurance treatment.
Okay, so let's go back. We've almost put the cart before the horse here,
Yes.
talking about what you do currently. But my guess is you didn't grow up as a little boy thinking, "Oh yeah, I think I'll grow up and become a worker in the addiction and recovery field," right?
No, I was
So
going
what's
to be in the NFL. That was,
okay? Yeah, seriously,
that's what I
you were a legend in your own mind.
Yes. We lived out in the country, and there's just so many good stories about this, but that apply to my journey. But we lived way out in the country, and we didn't have neighbors. So like I played football, but I didn't have neighbors or kids to play with, so I just played by myself. It was like I was the
You were the
quarterback,
star.
the running back, the
You were
wide
undefeated,
receiver.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was the star, and, like I would get under the center and take the snap and then hand it off to myself. Break tackles in the backfield.
Again, have you seen a professional about this?
Yeah. But what's funny is like we lived kind of on a highway, and when cars would come by, I was so afraid that they would see me out there playing by myself and that they would make fun of me. I have no idea who's in these
Interesting.
cars. But the backyard of our house was long and rectangle. So it was like the perfect football field. There was a tree on both ends of the yard that kind of marked the end zones for me. But like half the house covered like half of the backyard and not the other half. And so it was, it was like you're running down the field, you broke all the tackles. And I like to say like that head's cocked back and the shoulder pads are bouncing, it's like slow motion, highlight your moment, your 70-yard touchdown run to win the Super Bowl, and I'm running full speed, and you hear that sound of that car coming, and it's like, abandon everything, run back and duck down behind the house and hide so no one ever sees you. And like that's kind of very symbolic of like how I felt growing up always.
Wow.
Is like,
Interesting.
I want to be good and I want to go after it and pursue these things in my life, but I was so like restricted by my fears that I just always had to had to run and hide.
Not wanting to be seen.
Yeah. It's like everybody look at me, but quit looking.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So that's that, and I say that, but like that happened every day. It was like countless. Basketball season, kind of the same thing. I was shooting basketball and cars come and I run and hide, and baseball wasn't really
A thing.
not for me, not when I was a kid. I played, like Little League baseball and all, and I got more into baseball as I got older, but I don't remember it being, in my childhood, football was certainly like my main passion.
Well, it's probably a little harder to be the whole baseball team. It's a little easier to be the whole football. Right?
You can throw it up and hit it. Though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's easier
You run, chase it, and get it, and throw it back. You're like, man, it seems like a lot of energy. Running for a touchdown seems a little easier.
Yeah.
Right.
No siblings?
I have an older sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
She didn't want to play?
No. My sister, God bless her. I wish I had what she had. Like, my sister was born, and it was like the first words out of her mouth were, "I'm going to be a first grade school teacher." And
Wow.
she never
Knew her
deviated,
purpose, knew what she wanted to do.
She would kill me for saying this, but it's like she never made a C. She was never late for anything. She graduated college in like record timing, and paid for some of her college herself, like just did everything right. And
There's always some pain in the ass in our story, right?
Right. And
in her
I'd
shadow.
Like to say, but I'd like to say that I don't live from that place of comparison.
Yeah.
But I'm very much always comparing myself to others, or like judging me based on, it's like we start by asking some questions because I really need to find out, do you outrank me or do I outrank you? Like, where do I stand in
Where's
the
the
hierarchy
standing?
here?
Yeah.
Which is all flawed in and of itself. But I don't like to think that my parents ever compared us, or
Yeah.
you know, at least I don't
Yeah.
recall that. But obviously it's in there. So
And a part of you.
So
from-
do you think that was a part of maybe one of the unconscious drivers that eventually led to abusing substance, or?
you know, I was, like I said, I just always wanted like people to pay attention to me. You know, I wanted to feel seen, but yet
But look away. Don't let me see you
but I'm
seeing
running
me.
and hiding and wondering
Yeah.
why nobody's ever hearing or seeing me. You know, and I didn't know that. I can tell you that very clearly today, right? But
Right.
I didn't ever experience that, but you know, and then I'm in college, and you know, life goes however it goes. You realize that like the NFL's not happening, right?
They didn't call
They're
it.
not.
shame.
They're not looking. They're not looking in the farmlands of near Opelika for. Yeah.
yeah. I'm in a community college and not playing sports at all anymore. And I guess in the back of my mind was still like they were like, I'm going to be the Kurt Warner story. You know, I'm bagging groceries one day.
So
we had an English paper that was due. This is like that aha moment. This is that thing that happened. I had an English paper due, and I just had that feeling when I went to school that like in college especially, but I felt like everybody in our class had some prerequisite for this class, and I don't know how I didn't get it, but I don't have it. You know, maybe they went to a better school than I did, or had a better teacher than I had, or perhaps they paid attention when I was back there in the back daydreaming, but somehow they had a piece of information, and they're going to be successful. And I don't have that, right? And like, it's like, don't let anybody find this out, you know, it's like hide, right? And back to that feeling of I got to hide. And I like to say that I would sit over on the wall and like turn and face the wall so no one would look at me. And but we had a paper due, and I remember it was like the night before the paper, and just a friend, you know, he gave me a handful of opiates, which hydrocodones, and I was experimenting with things, but I never really, you know, I enjoyed the feelings that I got, but it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't solve all the problems.
Yeah.
But
It hadn't come addictive yet, or it wasn't
Right.
patterned yet.
And so that night I took those pills, and he was like, here, take these, it'll help you write your paper. And it's like the truest words ever spoken, you know?
Wow.
And I took them, and I sat down at the computer, and people that have an experience with opiates, they'll relate to this. Is like, you know, it's like there was a little bit of sweat on my forehead, and my nose is itching like a maniac. You know, I can't stop scratching. I'm trying to type, and I'm frustrated because like I can't type because I'm too busy scratching my nose. But I was like, I am writing one of the best English papers ever written. You know, it's like I had this feeling, this thought that when I submit my paper, my teacher's going to request that I stand up and read it out loud in front of the classroom.
Being seen again, right?
Being seen, right?
Yeah.
It's like it was my opportunity. And like that's kind of what it did, is it gave me that feeling of like I can come out from behind that house and I can run down that field, and it doesn't matter if you drive by. And and of course, you know, then you chase that forever. I don't know how we got on this topic, but
Yeah.
Good.
but yeah, then I chased that feeling, you know, forever. It was like, if I can keep this chemical in my body at all times and keep this feeling.
We had a similar
whenever I
experience
tried.
with one of our sons. He said that first hit of an opiate for him, it was like, this is the way life is supposed to be. This explains everything.
It was euphoric for him.
It gave me that prerequisite.
Yeah.
Now I measure up.
Yeah, I have what everybody else has. I can do life now.
Yeah.
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 So how did it progress?
I think it's more of a financial decision than anything. Like, you know, you build up tolerance really quickly. And so, you know, that moment, that one feeling, that one time, every other time I introduced opiates into my body, we're real close to that, but we're not quite
Still chasing
there.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, I tell this story a lot. It's like you buy 10 pills, you know, and you're going to take one, and you take one, and then 20 minutes later, you're like, you know, I'm almost right where I want to be. One more is gonna get me there. And so you add another one, and it's that same narrative. It's like one more is gonna be right. One more, and then you look around and you're like, whoops.
Where'd the 10 go?
Yeah, I'm out. And but then, you learn of like, okay, so I'm buying 10 of these for this much money, and I could spend less money and buy one of these, which is stronger than those 10.
Yep.
And so then it's like, okay, that's a financial decision, right? I can get more bang for my buck. And then, so then that increases. And then you learn that there's a different way to ingest it. You could snort it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so then so that you go to that. And again, the tolerance. So you just keep increasing the amounts, but you're putting so much in your body every single time because you're always like just below perfection.
Yeah.
I'm almost back
chasing that first one almost.
that's
all
it,
the time.
right? Like chasing the dragon, and then you learn intravenously, right? It's shoot it up. It's more potent, and so it just kind of keeps increasing.
Parallel again to our son's story is at 19 on a college campus, and same thing. Well, guys are coming. Why are you chasing those pills? Why are you spending that much? Why don't you?
Yeah.
And then putting a needle in his arm within a month. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like that question of why do you do it? And it's like I like to use this as how you ever hear people say, if you love me, you wouldn't do that. And I'm like, for the addict, it's different. But I'm doing it because you love me or because I love you. It's like I got to run and hide without it. This is the only thing I can do.
It's the only way I can show up for life.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's I don't have any other opportunity to be successful if I don't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it because we love one another,
Well, and that's an
necessity.
important, we do a parent support group. And so lots of those families, have people that are still using, and it's so confusing for the parents. And so, okay, this doesn't make sense, because I know my son, I know my daughter, and they love me and I love them, and we can talk about it, but they still continue, to go back. So that's what you're describing there is good for, for us to hear as parents, especially, to understand that it's a different mentality. It's a different drive that we can't connect to, we can't relate to.
Right.
And it's outside of us. It's not, it's not because of us we did something or we didn't do something. It's that really deep drive.
And I think even as the addict in the moment, like I didn't know that that's why I was doing it. I knew I didn't need to be doing it. I knew that I should stop.
Because I'm sure consequences were piling at starting to.
Yeah. And, but I remember, I was at a place for recovering addicts to get together and talk about their problems. We'll say it that way.
Yeah.
And a guy, I was so early on, and I have no idea what I said, but I shared something, and I probably thought I was so profound and just cured everybody in the room. But as a young man, and he kind of spoke after I did, and he just looked at me and he said, I pray you actually finally get in enough pain to be willing to do something about your problem. And now that moment stands out to me so much because for the first time, someone put a word to what I was feeling.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
I never, so it's like, I can tell you today I did it because I loved you, because of, I always felt less than, but during it, I couldn't make that connection. I didn't realize it.
Yeah. It really is amazing, my own experience in the rooms, how somebody will say something and at just the right time, it finally hits, and you're like, I needed somebody to put a word to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And somehow it breaks through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm looking that way because he was right there. I can still see him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a laser beam right in the middle of your forehead, and it all of a sudden you're like, okay.
I was like, pain.
Yeah.
That's me. Pain. And that's really where the journey began. That's kind of honestly where it all started, was from that moment forward. I started seeking help, I needed to relieve the pain, right?
Went to treatment several times?
No, several times, honestly. But no, not at that point. Here's a good go into treatment story.
Yes.
I started going to recovery communities in September of 2010, and I just couldn't stay sober.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I'd get 2 weeks, 30 days, something like that, but I just couldn't ever stop. And it was wintertime, and again, living out in the country, but we lived on a little creek. It was not a little creek; it was a big. It's part of the Chattahoochee River, and I had I like did the last of my drugs sitting on the bank of that creek or that river, and I had this. I just had this notion that, like, it was like I was going to baptize myself. It was like, if I get completely naked and completely submerge myself in this water, God's going to cleanse me and I never have to use again. And this was in February, so it was like freezing.
A little chilly.
Wow.
And I did it. And so then in March, I did it. I tried it again, right? It worked so well in February. I tried it again in March. And then in April, I actually went to a program. So like I got over trying it. But yeah, so it was in April of 2011 when I started going. I went to a program, and I'd gone to one earlier when I was in my early 20s. I didn't understand what addiction was. I had no idea that I was that, and I thought that whatever, if I just
Yeah.
Through
come
this.
Do
here
my
and-
30 days
Yes.
and I'll be good.
and my
Yeah.
my idea was like, I get dope sick, withdrawals. That's my problem. Is I get sick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't stop using.
If I
'cause
can
I'm always
manage
sick.
it. Yeah.
I was like, if I go here and do 30 days and get it out of my system, I don't get sick anymore. I can go back to just doing it on the weekends, and everything's going to be fine.
With Bill
Yes.
W. say we get a little sobriety, we become a more clever version of our drunk self.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was it.
yeah,
and
yeah.
and my therapist at the treatment center, when I was getting ready to leave, she said, you're the worst kind of person to come here. And I was insulted. Like, me? How could you ever? She was like, all you did was learn how to be a better addict when you leave here. And like, she was right. I didn't, at the time, I was like, whatever. But she was dead on.
Yeah, the
She had me
counselor
picked.
at our eldest son went to treatment the first time. The counselor said, bring me anybody in here except a functional alcoholic, because there is no logic. There
The
is no
functioning
talking.
addict, you can't do anything.
You can't do
with.
anything.
They think
Yeah.
they think they're managing.
Yeah.
Right.
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 The idea of unmanageability has not
Nope.
hit
Yeah.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I went through that program, and I was in pain, and someone offered me a solution to that pain, and my life, it got better, and I was able to string almost 5 years together at that time, between 4.5 and 5, and let me say it differently. I was able to string 3 really solid years
Yes.
of recovery together.
Yeah.
And then about 1.5 years of just slowly pulling away from the
Taking
recovery
apart your
lifestyle.
recovery or
Yeah. And I've heard someone say the problem with people that don't go to meetings is they don't get to see what happens to people that don't go to meetings.
Yeah.
And that's a true story. And
Yeah.
and so then I have a relapse in my story.
Yeah.
So then back in May of 2016. But
Yeah.
so yeah, several treatment centers. I don't remember exactly what the question was.
Yeah, it's just like the and again, so much of when we get the opportunity to listen to people tell their stories, so many of them are similar in that it's not a one and done thing,
Right.
and that's I think we're getting better at communicating that and educating people, and I'm always representing families here about the recovery process and what happens before a relapse or 2 relapses is not lost. And it's building. We try to help families understand that.
Yeah, it's like, people say, what happened, on your relapse? And like the answer is like, I got through things. That's what happened, It's like, don't let the promises keep you from experiencing the promises, right?
Yeah.
This event happened and I made it. I
Yeah.
made it through it, and I made it through it, and I made it through it. And at some point, I guess I kind of took, like, I'm the one making it through it.
Yes.
It wasn't a conscious decision to start pulling away from recovery. It was just life kind of came at me, and I didn't go one day, and
Yeah.
It's a compromise
survived.
here.
Well, that's
Yes.
kind of the common thing is it's not conscious.
right,
That's part of our problem. We're not quite as awake as we were. We fall back asleep a little bit.
right.
And it's easy to make decisions to not do things.
Yeah, and and then compromise. I don't like to say that it's a requirement.
Yes.
There are certainly people that didn't.
Yep.
But and for me, like, I don't think that the things I've learned post relapse,
Yeah.
I wasn't willing or even knew that I needed to learn those things prior to.
Yes.
You know, I learned a lot in my first time about fear, what my fears were, you know. I heard a lady say this one day, and she said, fear is like the billboard. So you say you're driving down the interstate, right? And you're hungry, and there's a billboard up there, and it says McDonald's, next exit, turn right. That's fear, right? And that's all we look at is the billboard, but that's not where the food is.
Right.
You know, it's telling you where the food is.
Yeah.
Next exit, take a right. And so that's kind of this time through, that's what I've learned is, like, don't just read the billboard, go to the restaurant. You know, there's something behind that fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's a great point, because I know in my life, in my recovery, and with folks I work with, often there's another driving emotion underneath the fear. The fear is what we experience at the moment.
Right.
But there may be something else, whether it's resentment or shame or guilt or something like that, that's really the driver underneath.
Right.
And if you don't go there and examine it, it's going to keep coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what it's kind of like, what is the solution spiritual? You know, I just look at it as like, it's because what I believe about myself, you know, generates all this fear in my life.
Yes.
And so I have to address what I believe about myself. Spirituality is, to me, is like, what do you believe about yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
What is it? The saying you hear now a lot, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a lot of what recovery is about. Good recovery really is that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, the restaurant, you know, the fear is always pointing at the restaurant. The restaurant for me is always like, there's a negative belief about self.
Yes.
And can I look at that and
Deal with that.
you know, is like, where did that belief start?
Yeah.
It started that 7-year-old kid that had to run and hide behind that house, you know, like that's where the fear, that's what I believe that's who I believe I am. Like when I'm sitting here, you're looking at me and in my mind, you're looking at a 7-year-old kid.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Right.
Yeah.
And so can I take what that belief is about self, and then can I put it in facts? You know, it's like, you're not 7, you're 43. It's okay. 43-year-old probably capable of handling this situation.
Yeah.
Then I can start to shift that belief.
Plus,
carry myself
don't you think
accordingly.
also, I know for me and others, I think it's important to stop blaming that 7-year-old,
Yeah. I
which
love it.
sounds crazy, but the truth is unconsciously, that's a lot of what we're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I one of the therapists, right? And I was told to go home and sit down and like sit in a chair right in front of the sofa and put the 7-year-old here. And then it was my father, put my imaginary, but you know, my father there. And let's just have a real long conversation with both of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was like snot crying. And, but that was a moment for me. Like it kind of changed everything is just that conversation of like, you know, there was damage done, but I don't hold you responsible for it.
Yes. Yeah.
7-year-old, like, you know, was like,
You did the best you could.
yeah. But I got it from here.
Yeah.
You know, and they both continue to share in my mind, right? But today it's kind of like, I hear you, and thanks for sharing that, but I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
It's like the guy used to tell us, you got to tell your story about 5,874 times before you're healed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the more we keep telling the story, the potential for healing keeps coming at a deeper level. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we share in meetings.
Yeah. Experience, strength, and hope. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The more I talk about it, the more I can articulate it. You
Yeah.
know? So it's like the more I share it, the more I actually know what it is. And the more I know where it is, the more it points to the next thing that I need to know what it is.
Right.
It's like it's never ending, continual growth, right?
So okay, getting some sobriety. So bridge the gap here for us between getting sober and then what you're doing now. How did that happen?
So in 2010, I went through a sober living, and it just I'd always played sports and always been kind of on a team, and it has that team feel. You know, we all live together and we're all kind of in this together, and develop relationships unlike any kind of relationship I'd ever had. I didn't, you know, in the literature for the recovery I work, it says we don't have the capacity to form a genuine relationship with another human being, and I believe that was accurate. You know? And so for the first time, I was actually forming, you know, what could qualify as genuine relationships.
Yeah.
Well, and again, you're back to the spiritual because there's a sense of belonging.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely, and a sense of realness. You know, I'm able to be me, and these guys still like me.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I learned early in sponsorship, and then beginning to sponsor people. I used to tell guys, "Hey, we're just going to practice being intimate," and they're like, "What?" I said, "No, not that. I just." But really, we never knew how to be intimate with ourselves or anybody else. So this is a safe place to practice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I knew like I was something was about sober living I was drawn to, and I want to do that. Now I didn't understand how to go about that, so I got sober, and I'll go to school and get my master's in counseling, and I'll be a therapist, and like I thought that would be the way to get into sober living, but again, then there was a relapse that followed. So go to school to be a therapist to treat substance abuse while getting high. That's a really great self-esteem building moment for you. But I ended up, kind of didn't finish school and back in a program again. And so I was back in a sober living that time too.
Yeah.
I went to work one day and I came home back to the sober living I was living at, and I walked back up on the property coming home from work, and the owner was there, and he said, "I want you to take your belongings and move from this apartment down to that apartment." And it was like 3:00, and he's like, and we have a staff meeting that starts at 4:00. You work here now. And I was like, "Oh, okay." Whatever, right? And he didn't he didn't even ask if I wanted to.
It wasn't an offer. It was just
you work here now. And but I did want to. I didn't really know I wanted to, but I did. And so then I started working there, and it's just like every day is in that journey. It's like the next door opens, and it's like it's funny. I was actually talking about this the other night. Is like today I do a lot of speaking, speaking at sober livings or at different treatment centers, and like I never knew I wanted to be a speaker. But the first time I spoke in front of a group of people about addiction, I was like, I knew this is all I'd ever wanted to do. It was like I never knew I wanted to, but it was all I'd ever wanted. And
coming home to a place you'd never been before.
Yeah, return to the place you've never been. Yeah. That's what I said. Is like I returned to the place I'd never been.
Yeah.
But that so connects to me. I'm tearing up a little bit about where you started with the football thing.
Yeah, it was like
you're performing, you're doing the thing, and you're being seen.
Right.
And you're okay with it.
Yeah, and we don't have to like run head into head and hurt.
Yes.
That was why I couldn't play football. It's like that it hurts. I wanted to so bad, but I was like at that point of contact, I'm like, that hurts. And so I get to have that without having to get hit to get there. So that's exactly right. I have a chance to feel that feeling of like people do value me.
Yes.
Yeah. They're looking, they're listening. Wow.
Yes.
I feel seen. I feel heard. And
it's authentic.
And so much of that, I believe, is the attachment to shame having to be dissolved in terms of being seen. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the pathway to the detachment from shame is backwards from the way you want to go. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, I don't want that to be there. Let's pretend like it doesn't exist, and then let's go, like pick myself up by my bootstraps, so to speak.
Yes.
But the way out is backwards. For me, it's been like admit that it's there and tell you that it's there.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you go, I'm that too. And now we connect
me too.
on it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, it's like, to use our language here is like, we will not regret the past, never wish to shut the door on it.
Yeah.
Right. And we will see how our experience can benefit those or
no matter
commit
how
to
far
others,
down
right?
we went, right?
Yeah, and so that's the truth. Is like most of the shame is diminished today because those things I didn't want you to know are the assets today on how we help other people.
Yeah.
And so now there's no reason to have shame around it. It's
Yeah.
it's a tool. You know, it's become a weapon. Like the pastor says, what Satan meant for evil, God has turned to good. It's
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't necessarily prescribe to everything in that
Yes.
line
Yeah.
of thinking. But,
Yes.
but that's been true for me. Yeah. So the shame, I definitely think it's there and it's always present, but but the pathway out to me is
Yeah.
what's so baffling.
Yeah.
You know,
The way out is the way through.
yeah, do more, be better. It never got me there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, just allow it. And
Well,
accept it.
it's similar to actually using a substance or a behavior. Do more, do better is another way to anesthetize, right?
Right.
To move it, to push it back, to put it down. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Bill Wilson said, greed masquerading as ambition.
Yes.
You know, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what he was alluding to is like I mask it as ambition and it's a good quality, but it's really
Yep.
greed. But
It's egocentric instead
Yes.
of coming out of the soul.
right, which
Yeah.
is a counter to the ego is derived from my shame.
Yeah, absolutely. Built around it.
Right.
Yeah. Wade, thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing your story. Folks, thanks for joining us this time for this episode of APC Recovery Cafe. We'll see you soon.
One of the things that APC is known for is being a connector because we're stronger together.
Not only are we there for those who are suffering through substance use disorder, but we're there for family members, and we really take our job seriously.
We all have personal reason why we're in this field. We're changing people's lives one community at a time.